Democrat members of the House of Representatives from California, because there aren't any Republicans in California. So, it's up to 38.
Yes, there are.
Elected.
Just to raise our hands?
Yeah. She currently serves in the House Judiciary Committee, where she is the ranking Democrat on the Subcommittee on Immigration and Border Security, and House Science, Space, and Technology Committee, and the Committee on House Administration. As the highest-ranking Democrat and former chair of the Subcommittee on Immigration, Policy, and Enforcement, Representative Lofgren has been a longtime advocate of comprehensive immigration reform. She is one of the 8 members of the bipartisan group working on the House's comprehensive immigration reform bill, and Representative Lofgren is well regarded for her work on patent reform, copy issues, digital rights, and net neutrality. She was a key supporter of the E-rate program, which provides internet access to schools and libraries, and she is the author of legislation to impose a moratorium on state and local cellular taxes. During her time in Congress, Representative Lofgren has also worked to protect homeowners from predatory and deceptive mortgage practices and led efforts to give bankruptcy judges the authority to adjust primary mortgages. Zoe at one time was a representative for us at Gilroy, and then they changed it, and now she's back again. So let's give a big hand for Zoe.
Before we begin, I wonder if you would join me in a pledge to our flag.
Thank you.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your very warm welcome and for the invitation to come down to Gilroy. You know, it's true that when I was first elected to Congress, Gilroy was in the congressional district that I represented, and then the legislature did redistricting, and they didn't ask me, and we ended up with a weird situation where Congressman Honda represented Gilroy, Congressman Pombo, and later Congressman McNerney represented Morgan Hill, and I represented in between, which didn't seem to make a lot of logic. And now we've had a commission do the redistricting, and lucky for me, I'm back in Gilroy, but why they would take a town the size of Gilroy and divide it into 2, I cannot explain. So Congressman Farr and I both represent Gilroy, and I'm happy to do so. I had a lot of friends when I was lucky to represent Gilroy before, and I'd like to announce that I will be having office hours in South County. The city of Gilroy is very friendly, offers space here, and so there's lots of parking and it's convenient. And I will have staff here on the 1st and 3rd Mondays of each month in the morning for people who want to come in and see my staff. Now, before we get into just a couple of brief remarks I'll make, and then mainly I'd like to hear from you what's on your mind, either questions or suggestions. I'll point out that we have, where are these, Hassan, over in the back? Opinion question sheets. If you want to give me your viewpoint, but you'd rather not stand up in front of a crowd, that's okay. You can write your name, write your question or your suggestion right here. Also, if there's something that you need help with, your father-in-law has a problem with the VA, or something like that, and you would prefer to have a little privacy when bringing that up, you don't need to stand up here and say it in front of everybody. I have staff, and staff please stand up here, who are here, 3 lawyers, my chief of staff, Sandra Soto, and the Kathleen Collins, the woman that the VA system fears the most, who will be happy to take your information. There's something we can do to help. We certainly want to. We can never guarantee results, but we will guarantee our best efforts to go to bat for you. Just a couple of things I wanted to talk about in terms of South County. I know, is everybody here from Gilroy? Anybody from Morgan? Okay. One of the things that I I promised to do when Morgan Hill was moved out was to not forget the August Creek Flood Project. And ever since, even though it wasn't in the district, I've been pestering the Army Corps of Engineers trying to get, and the water district, trying to get that project done. Now, and here is Sig Sanchez, former county supervisor Sig Sanchez. It's so great to see you. Let's welcome Sig. We have worked very hard, and some people would say that Gilroy was lucky, others would say they were farsighted. In any case, the August Creek project here in Gilroy was done, but the upper Yagas in Morgan Hill was not. And it floods downtown, and also floods some ag land. And we have been working, as I say, trying to get this project off of a dead stop. It doesn't currently meet all the requirements that the Army Corps has for flood control, but we've been working with them. I've met with the Army Corps repeatedly, and the Water District has as well, trying to figure out a way to stop flooding in Morgan Hill. I mean, to me, it's outrageous. Every winter, it floods. So we're down to this. We need to get $47,000, a lot of money, but in the scheme of water, flood control projects, not a major amount, allocated to this project. And then the water district is going to be able to proceed. They're fronting some money to the Army Corps. They're going to be able to pull down some state money. And with the bonds that local voters voted for, they think they're going to be able to do a big chunk of this project, and it will likely stop the flooding in downtown and stop the erosion of the ag land as well. So I wrote a letter to the Army Corps just last week. I met with the officials in charge of the Army Corps the week before last, and I wanted to give a report on that project. We're going to have to identify funds either from the San Jose project when that's closed out, or I may have to go begging to my colleagues in the California delegation, asking them to allow us to reallocate some funding. Another report of local interest, one of the things that I'm able to do sometimes is run interference for local governments with the federal government. And Don and I met, what was that, Don? A month and a half ago, a couple months ago. And there was a problem with FEMA. There is a program that is utilized and very successfully called SAFER, which provides grants to localities for firefighters. And it's especially important in this time when we've had cutbacks in local governments all across the country to try and provide emergency funding so the firefighters don't get laid off. Because if you lay off the firefighters, you can't just bring them back. I mean, they're going to go find jobs in other communities, and it has a very adverse impact on public safety. I was happy working with the city that we were able to get FEMA to cut the red tape, make this thing work, so that we have the funding we believe for the 6 fire personnel that were in jeopardy. It's about $2.3 million, and it will make sure that these firefighters are not laid off, and that fire safety, which I think is very good here in Gilroy, is not impacted. I want to say just a word about the budget, the Affordable Care Act, and then immigration, and then maybe we can go to your questions, or as I say, I always need advice. First, a word about the Affordable Care Act. It's about, this was something that was approved several years ago, but it has been phased in over the years. It's a very large bill. Some people said, did you read the bill? Yes, we did. As a matter of fact, the bill was lengthy, and in the Democratic caucus, we read it aloud, actually, with everybody in the room, and we had, sometimes when you read bills, they refer to tax code sections. Reading it doesn't always mean you understand it, so we had a team of experts going through explaining the context so that we understood it. When it came back from the Senate, we read it aloud again, over 100 people sitting in the basement hour after hour, so that we would at least have an understanding, we hope, of what we were supporting. Now, some of the things have already gone into effect. We have something that has been very popular, at least from what people have been telling me, which is a provision that if you have a son or daughter, you can keep that son or daughter on your own insurance up to age 26, which since I have at least one young person, oftentimes young people don't feel the need to get health care insurance. They do feel the level of disability, and it is very important and affordable to keep those young people on your health care. We also will prohibit currently denying children with pre-existing conditions from insurance. If you don't have a child with a disability, this may not seem like a big thing, but I have met many people, your neighbors, who have a child with a disability or a heart condition or some medical condition. They couldn't get medical health insurance for that child at any price. So you're no longer going to be able to deny health care insurance to children, and starting next year to anyone because of a pre-existing condition. Another large benefit is that you can't have lifetime caps. And I've also met people, you pay your insurance premiums year after year after year, and you get something really serious like cancer. And as soon as you hit the limit, they refuse to pay, even though you've paid all your life. You can't put that lifetime limit under the law coming in to effect. We're also going to provide tax credits to small business so that they're going to be able, we hope, to make insurance more affordable for their employees. Recently, in fact, just last week, covered California. This is going to be administered state by state, and there will be differences in each state. But California came out with its plan, and although some were concerned that there would be very high premiums, in fact, for most people, the premiums will go down, and certainly for some, they may go up, but they're not going to go up as probably as much as they would have. We've actually stemmed the increase in health care premium costs. Everybody who has health insurance that they want to keep can keep it, except for one group, and that is members of Congress. We actually put a provision in the bill that members of the House and Senate are required to buy their health care insurance from the exchanges. We can't keep what we have, but everybody else in America can keep that. We've got details. I don't want to go into mind-numbing details of who's eligible for what, but we have charts. And if you have individual questions about how it might impact you, we'd love to be able to provide any information that you might wish. And we will, if there are glitches in terms of dealing with the program, we're also anxious to try and run interference if there should be a problem of any sort. Finally, I'd like to talk just a little bit about our budget, deficit spending, our future. I have some charts that we usually do. Are they readable? Maybe not. Obviously, we need to get control of our budget. We don't have limitless funds, and we have to live within our means over a long period of time. But spending, annualized growth of spending, actually, people don't realize this, has dropped tremendously in the last several years. And this chart actually shows what has happened. It's sort of counterintuitive because the information really isn't very much out there. The record deficit was in fiscal year 2009, $1.4 trillion deficit. It was attributable to many things. We have, do we have the chart on the cause of the, no, we didn't decide not to do that, but there were a combination of factors that really pumped up that deficit. The wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, none of which was paid for, all borrowed money. The very large tax reductions engaged in 2001, a big hole in the budget because the spending didn't come down, but the revenue did. And of course the recession put a gigantic hole in the budget, probably because revenues into the government fell, but also expenditures in terms of health care costs, unemployment insurance, and the like also skyrocketed. So what is happening now? Revenues, the economy is actually, these are too small, unfortunately. Next time I'll have a PowerPoint. The economy is starting to come out of its recession, which is the good news. We still have a ways to go, but Silicon Valley and Santa Clara County generally, employment is starting to ramp back up. You can see it, you know, when I drive around in the morning on the freeway and I'm stopped, instead of being frustrated, I think, this is good. These people have jobs. It's starting to be a better employment situation, which is terrific news for all of us, but especially for young people who have really borne the brunt more than any other group. Kids, you know, coming into the workforce out of school and they can't find a job. So those kids, we hope, are going to be finding employment. Revenue is increasing into the Treasury, but also the cause of, you know, the need for help is declining because people who are employed do not need unemployment insurance. They don't need other forms of assistance. So we are on a track, according to the budget, Congressional Budget Office, to actually start paying off some of our debt on July 1st. That doesn't mean we're out of the woods. We have big challenges that we have to face, including making sure that our Social Security retirement system is sound for the future. The Medicare system is sound for the future. But I just wanted you to know this is not unattended to in Washington, and there is some good news despite what some of the doomsayers say. And finally, I'd like to talk just a little bit about immigration. You know, Don mentioned that I'm the senior Democrat on the Immigration Subcommittee, and the Mavis Toscano, I don't know if you want me to introduce you, but Mavis Toscano, a Gilroy girl, was my chief of staff for many years, and when I was first elected, and one of the things that we struggled with was, what committees do you get on? And not that I got my first choice necessarily, but the committees that you serve on have a tremendous impact on the work that you do. It's not that you don't vote on every bill, you do, but the bills that come through your committee are what you have to pay the most attention to. The rest of the Congress relies on the members of each committee to develop expertise in those areas. And so I've served on the Judiciary Committee now for many years. Before I was ever in elected office, I was a lawyer. I'm still a lawyer, but I don't practice law. And I practice immigration law, and for a time I taught law at the University of Santa Clara. I taught immigration law. And so I've had a long history of dealing with the laws about immigration. And to make a long story short, the whole system is pretty dysfunctional at this point. Most people who have never run into it personally think, well, why don't people just do it the legal way? I'm sure the people who say that are absolutely sincere and maybe are not aware that in most cases there is no legal way for people to come and meet an economic need of the country. For years, I've been trying to put together a bipartisan coalition to come to grips with the need for reform. And when I chaired the Immigration Subcommittee a few years ago, one of the things that I did was reach out to the faith community and to solicit their advice and also their testimony about immigration. And one of the individuals who I actually speak very friendly, we don't agree on a lot of things, but we did agree on this, was Dr. Richard Land from the Southern Baptist Convention. He was a witness before the subcommittee. Is this going on or not?
Yeah.
I always mention that because his line was so great, and I don't want to steal the line from Dr. Land. He said that for many years, we had two signs at the southern border. One sign said no trespassing, and the other sign said held wanted. And if you think about how the law is crafted and what the needs of our economy are, his testimony makes some sense. We have roughly, for example, 2 million migrant farm workers in the United States. An estimated 70 to 80% of those migrant farm workers are immigrants without legal papers. On the other hand, what we found is that if you advertise those jobs, even at good pay, there aren't very many takers. And in fact, in states that have come down on a statewide basis on immigration enforcement, they've had to plow the fields of it. They were unable to get the farm workers necessary to make the ag sector work. How many visas are there for non-college educated workers a year? 5,000. So we have 2 million migrant farm workers, 5,000 legal permanent residence visas for non-college educated skilled workers. Obviously, there was an economic need and no legal way for people to meet that need. I don't approve of people who don't follow the law and the rules, but I also understand the economic dynamic that has occurred over the years. For those of you who've ever run into the immigration system because a family member married somebody from France, people just assume that if your daughter marries somebody from another country, her husband can come here and live with her. Not in every case. We've made some changes in the law, so if people were out of status, the husband or wife would have to leave the country for 10 years, leave their children and husband behind. I thought that was a bad addition to the law, and what it's resulted in is a lot of people deciding not to leave their families behind and living in the shadows. We have also had a situation where we have insufficient enforcement of the law. We had a hearing the other day on about the 1986 law, the so-called Reagan amnesty, and why didn't it work? There was inadequate enforcement in the workforce. There was inadequate enforcement at the border. That has very much changed at this point, but there was also no provision to meet the actual needs of the United States when it came to family reunification or the economic needs of the country. As we were talking, one of my colleagues who's a Republican, Spencer Backus, a very conservative man from Alabama, said, well, I don't think the Reagan amnesty was a failure. 3 million people became good Americans and made our country a better place. So I think we ought to at least look at that. But the question that we were trying to come to grips with about 4 years ago, a group of us, was could you take the most conservative Republicans in the House and Democrats who were conservative and work through these issues and come up with a bill that served the country? And so we started meeting. The Senate says they're a gang of 8. We say we're a working group of 8. We're not a gang. And we started meeting confidentially, 2 to 3 times a week in secret, because we didn't want to make an announcement prematurely. We have hundreds of hours that we have met trying to sort through the complicated issues. And we are now close to, we hope, and there's no guarantee, but we are close to putting together a bill that will include, myself, a member of the Tea Party, a conservative Republican, Rockford Republican from Texas, Luis Gutierrez, who's one of the most liberal members of Congress, a bill that we hope will serve America very well by resolving the immigration dilemma, by making sure that we have enforcement that people can believe in, that we have border and it's not just border, 40% of the people who are here without papers overstay their visas, so people coming to airports, that we have a system that allows families to actually reunify, that we figure out a way for the people who responded to Dr. Land's help wanted sign to come forward and get right with the law and move forward with their lives. And so that's it in a nutshell. We're working very hard. The Speaker of the House, who is not somebody who I hang around with, but who sought me out last week saying that you were very interested in seeing if we could have a bipartisan effort to resolve this very tricky, sticky issue for the country. And I hope that our efforts are successful. With that, before I call on whoever wants to give me a piece of their mind, let me just say it's an honor to represent you in Congress. I go to Washington usually every week. This week is the exception because we were home on Memorial Day, are staying for the rest of the week to be with constituents. But I come home to San Jose and the Valley every single week. It's a long commute. But it's good to be home with people, and I never want to be ungrounded and living in Washington and not in touch with the people who send me there to represent them, and that means you. So with that, thanks for your attention, and we have about an hour of questions or advice. Who would like to be first? Yes, ma'am.
I understand to become a citizen, you have to be able to read and write English. So why, when they have these ceremonies for them to become citizens, they do it in numerous languages?
Well, in order to become a U.S. citizen, there's several parts. First, you have to be a legal permanent resident of the United States, and there are varying amounts of time. For example, if you're in active duty in the U.S. military, you can apply to become a citizen in 6 months. If you're married to a United States citizen, you can apply in 3 years. If you're here without that relationship, it's 5 years. Then you have to be able to pass a citizenship test. You have to be able to speak English and read and write enough to pass the test. There are exceptions. If you're an aged person and you've been here more than 20 years, you don't have to do the English part. The citizenship ceremonies I've been in have all been in English, although there was one ceremony that I went to, a woman who was 96 years old, who had been here as a legal permanent resident for 50 years, and she wanted to be a citizen before she died, and she didn't have to take the test in English, and she did become a citizen. She didn't speak English so well.
Well, they recently showed on TV that they had one in San Jose, and they spoke 3 languages.
I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
I've never seen it.
Can you repeat the questions if we
I
can
sure will.
from the audience?
Sure.
please?
Yes, sir.
My name is Ed Sanchez. Zoe, we're very happy that you're representing us in Washington, D.C. I want to acknowledge a very dear friend of mine, Sig Sanchez, whom you've already introduced. These are some of my 40 students that I have. I teach citizenship and ESL here in Gilroy. We've been in business for about 15, 16 years. And they're here because they want you to know that once they become citizens, they're going to vote.
Good.
I don't know how they're going to vote, but I have an idea. And I want you to know that these are hardworking people. They have full-time jobs, and they come to the class. They're tired, but we keep them alive because we have people like you in D.C. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, and welcome for your ESL class. It's hard to learn another language. And I think the older you are, the harder it is. I mean, if you're a little kid, it's a piece of cake. But if you're my age, it's kind of tough. So congratulations for your effort, and good luck as you move forward, and we wish you the best of luck.
I just want to share a personal experience in addressing the immigration and your question. It's a comment, not a question. I have a friend that's retired from Santa Clara County, and her husband own lots of property here in Gilroy. They also own a huge property in Arizona. And ever since Arizona made it state law that's really federal law, they grow watermelons, and would go every year and grow the watermelons and have them picked and make some money for the summer. Well, now, the last 2 years, they have not been able to get enough workers to pick the watermelons, so they're not growing them anymore, so their land is useless in Arizona.
It's interesting because we have some agriculture here in South County, and I've met with the Farm Bureau here and also down in Salinas and the Central Valley. Because of my position on the committee, I meet with farm groups all over the United States who come in and are asking for help. And without exception, this is a catastrophe for agriculture in America.
It is.
And we've got to do our best to address that successfully. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I back to this question. Why is the Department of Homeland Security monitoring the Tea Party IRS demonstrations? Do we have a federal police force?
But the question is, why was the Department of Homeland Security monitoring the Tea Party IRS demonstrations? Number one, I don't know that that
That
can
happened
occur.
in San Jose, San Francisco, St. Louis, Missouri, and other places.
I don't know anything about it, it's news to me, but if you have information that you can provide me, I promise I will look at it. Homeland Security doesn't have like a police force.
But the cars all say police, and then at the top, it says Homeland Security.
I have no idea what that would be, and
It looked like police.
this is the first I've ever heard of it. So if you can give me information about it, I will be happy to see what I can find out. The only police agents in Homeland Security are the Immigration and Customs Enforcement is the closest, otherwise known as ICE, is the closest thing to police in the Department of Homeland Security. They do have the Border Patrol, they also have the Coast Guard, but they don't have a police force per se. So if you will get that information to my staff, I will follow up with it. Yes, ma'am.
I would like to follow up on that. I have about 15 questions I wanted to ask, but I'm going to follow up on that one because that's something that's a real concern to me. My name is Pat Denny, and I live in the county portion of Arkansas, so you are my representative. I've been overly concerned about Janet Napolitano purchasing a minimum of 1.6 billion with a B, rounds of what's now called self-defense ammunition. It used to be called hollow points. This ammunition is way back in 1890 something. We signed a treaty called the Hague Treaty. It's an international treaty that we're not going to use that kind of weapon in war. Now, that really hit me right between the eyes because I thought if it's not good enough for us to use on other countries that are trying to defend ourselves from, why would Janet Napolitano, in some cases they'll tell you she bought 2 billion rounds. 2 billion rounds comes out to be 7 rounds for every person in the country. Her answer publicly was that it's to use for target practice. You do not use that kind of ammunition for target practice. It goes in, a 38 will go in about that big and come out the size of an orange. It's to stop someone and protect yourself. That's why they call it self-defense now. These thousands and billions of pieces of ammunition are being distributed around the country to different federal offices. I've been told, and I said, what kind of offices are you talking about? Social Security, IRS, all federal offices. What in the world? And I'm telling you, you try to buy self-defense ammunition right now, if you can find it, it's through the ceiling price-wise because she's bought so much of it. They cannot keep up with producing because of what Homeland Security is purchasing. That makes, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, believe me, but that makes me nervous. Why are we arming Homeland Security and other federal offices with dangerous ammunition? If you don't know, which I'm assuming you probably don't, would you please get back to me? And I'm going to send you a letter and ask you so you'll be able to respond back.
Was everyone able to hear the question in that?
Can I add to that, please? Just a quickie. Self-defense ammunition or hollow point ammunition is about twice as expensive as practice ammunition. So most of the need for ammunition in government is for practice, like police forces and anyone who uses ammunition. Most of their need for it is for practice to keep their skills current. Very rarely do they actually use the lethal ammunition for enforcement. So it's a mystery to me. It's a mystery.
They bought hollow points.
I know, that's the problem. I don't understand.
Control of the meeting.
I agree with you. They don't use
I've never heard this before, so I will, one of the things you'll learn about me if you don't know me is if I don't know something, I'm going to tell you something. I'm not going to try and fake it. I've never heard of this.
You have never heard of this?
I can't believe it. So I'll see what I can find out about it, and I will get back to you. All right, I will do that. Who else has a question they want to answer?
Okay, when you were just talking, you made the comment regarding immigration that there is no legal way. Well, I disagree. And I'm wondering, what is the point of implementing new laws if we don't follow up and do what we're doing on our old laws? We don't enforce the old laws. It seems like we're just going out and making new laws to cover up the old laws. And then that same thing with the immigration with respect to the Sarnaev brothers or Al-Iraqi. I sent you a letter on that. The guy that was at the Boston bombing that they took, and he was a person of interest. That opened up a whole thing about, I think it was 37,000. We don't even know where the people that are in our country right now are student visas, the people that have student visas are, but yet you want to make new laws of immigration. Doesn't that kind of nullify our other laws if we just pick and choose which laws we enforce and which ones we don't? I mean, it just seems like you're trying to slap on new laws. And I mean, maybe I'll go commit murder. Well, let's just let you slide on that, Georgine, and not, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think everybody heard the question. Let's talk about the provision in current law that is supposed to meet the agricultural needs of the country. There's a allocation of 5,000 visas a year that is available to people who have skills that are not college dependent. 5,000 visas. That's for everything. I mean, agriculture, LPNs, I mean, everything, and it's the whole country. And in my judgment, you may have a different point of view, it is woefully insufficient to meet the actual needs of the United States. There are several temporary visa programs. For agriculture, there's a program called the H-2A program, which basically doesn't work. There's one state, North Carolina, that has successfully used it, but for most people, if you meet with the ag sector, it's terrible. Keeps going on. If you meet with the farming community, they can't make the thing work. It's each person has to be interviewed every year in the consulate. On average, the workers that come in are 20 to 25 days late, which means they've missed the harvest. There is no way to get people in the ag sector, and that's just the truth of it. There is a program called the H-2B program, which is a temporary visa for seasonal workers that works in some parts of the country. It's capped. It's primarily used in resort areas, ski country. Some carnivals sometimes use that in traveling circuses. The crab shuckers in Maryland are H-2B, but there's 66,000 a year. They run out the day that they become eligible, and that's the only thing that's available in addition to the 5,000 visas. So that's in the current law. It's not meeting the needs of the United States, and periodically we take a look at the law and see what will work better. That's the job of the legislative body, to try and improve the law so it works best for the country. When it comes to enforcement, President Obama has actually, and many of us think he's gone overboard on this, has started tremendous enforcement of the Immigration Act. In fact, there have been more people deported in the first 4 years of his administration than in the prior 8 years of the Bush administration. Rather than doing kind of showy raids, as was done in the Bush administration, his administration is doing something that is probably more effective, although not as showy, which is something called an I-9 audit. And what they do is to have people go in and check, if you are working in the United States, you have to fill out something called an I-9 and show that you're permission to work. and sometimes people give false documents if they're not here lawfully. And so those numbers are then run through the Social Security Administration, and if it comes back with wrong information, the person is no longer eligible to hold the job, and if the employer knowingly did it, they could be fined. And the number of fines that have been imposed on employers is like 3 times what it was under the prior administration. In fact, one year there were no fines under the Bush administration. So has everything been done? No. But there has been a tremendous ramp up on enforcement. The problem that I see with that is that there's been no adjustment to the law. I mean, if you're going to enforce something, you should be enforcing a workable system. And that's not what we have right now. So I take the laws are changed constantly, and they should be amended to work best for America, in my judgment. That's not what I'm trying to do. Yes, over here.
Thank you for being here, Zoe. What is your opinion on the implementation of the United Nations mandate, Agenda 21, Sustainable Development? And how do you feel, being from California, with what is happening to this state, with 51, only 49% of it now being privately owned, and specifically what is going on with the One Bay Area plan in San Jose?
Well, once again, I don't know the United Nations 21 mandate plan. That's a new one to me. Certainly, as you know, the United Nations cannot legally mandate anything on the United States. We have, I'll just talk about what I think about the Bay Area. As you know, I served on the Board of Supervisors for many years before I was in the Congress. And one of the things I thought, we made a big effort at doing was to try and, through land use, keep the entire area from being completely paved over, and to preserve some kind of open space as well as preserve agriculture. It became difficult in areas where agriculture was already encroaching, but we would hear from farmers who were next door to housing developments that couldn't spray their fields, they couldn't do ordinary agricultural work because it would bother their urban neighbors. So that it's helpful through land use planning if you can keep some division between big ag uses and really urban residential uses. We tried to do that. The federal government has almost no say in land use planning. It's one of the things I'm grateful for. One of the things I didn't like was land use and people coming and yelling at each other in the Board of Supervisors, but I live here, and so I hope that the local government officials do a good job of preserving a quality of life. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Barbara Bottini, and other than participating in local and federal elections, I have not previously been very active politically. But I would like to know what your plans are to A, work with the Republicans to reach compromises, and B, how can you encourage other Democrats to work towards compromising with Republicans, because I think we are in great need of a return to compromise.
Yes.
Thank you.
Everyone hear that question? Well, it's interesting because I think our bipartisan group on immigration is very much kind of a unique circumstance. I mean, nobody is doing that right now but us. And I think, it's difficult because sometimes it's not just can't you all get along. Sometimes there are very big disagreements that are not subject to compromise. And I'll give you an example. I think I serve on the Science Committee. I think it's, based on the science that I reviewed, I think there's very little doubt based on the science that has come to the forefront that we are in a major climate change event, and that the activities of mankind has had a significant impact on that climate change event. The chairman of the Science Committee, Lamar Smith, is from Texas, and he doesn't believe it's happening. In fact, he just did an op-ed in the Washington Post, I believe, saying that it's not really happening. Well, it's difficult to come to an agreement on what to do if you don't even agree on the facts, number one, and the cause. So, I mean, you try, but sometimes it's not possible. Not everything is like that. I think that the immigration measure that we're working on may be the outlier. And sometimes I think once you work with people, it helps you work more together. At the last meeting we had, one of the Republicans, and it was a private meeting, said that it was the first time there's 8 of us, but only 1 woman, so you won't be able to guess who it was. But it was the first time he could ever say he actually had a friend across the aisle. And that the first time he actually knew people, and even though he didn't agree in every respect, he respected their integrity and the fact that we all love the country, you know? So that's a good thing, if you can get to that point. In this group, even people I disagree with, I mean, the fact that I think they're completely wrong doesn't mean that they don't love the country and they're not trying to do their best. I mean, you have to try and find common ground. The other thing that's interesting is that I started reviewing the bills that I'm on, and I may have set a record on bipartisan bills. I don't know, I can't claim that's true because I haven't compared and contrasted, but what we're finding is standing up for the Constitution is a bipartisan endeavor. I don't know if any of you follow this situation where the phone records of the Associated Press were obtained. That was probably lawfully obtained. The statute, which goes back a long ways, allows for business records to be obtained with the subpoena only. There is a regulation that doesn't have the force of statute suggesting how the Department of Justice should proceed. If it's press records, I don't know that that was complied with. But whether or not it was, I mean, the statute should change. You should be able to go get phone records with a subpoena. What's wrong with getting a warrant? You can get a warrant over the phone if necessary. The phone records aren't going away. I mean, if you have to take an hour to get a warrant, AT&T still has the record. I mean, they're not going to erase the record while you're getting the warrant. And so we've got a bill with a very, very, very conservative guy, maybe one of the top 2 or 3 conservative Republicans, and me, and another Democrat that we put in to require a warrant. I did a bill, this was about a month and a half, 2 months ago, to update the Electronic Privacy Communications Act that, despite its name, doesn't give much privacy to communications. A lot of people don't realize that if you have saved emails, the government, whether it's federal, state, or local, can go to your internet service provider and get those emails without a warrant. Because the idea is that they're not under the law. They don't have the protection that a real-time communication would. In a way, that's totally backwards. I mean, if I save an email from my daughter, it's because it means a lot to me. It's the stuff that I delete that doesn't matter to me. So this would require a warrant to go get the stored emails. It would provide privacy for geolocation. Now, if you have a cell phone, your cell phone say where you are within a foot. Information in the cloud, we're talking about cloud computing, that's stored in servers someplace else. That doesn't have protection in the same way that if information was stored on your hard disk in your house, but it should. So this is a complete revision that provides privacy to Americans in the digital age. I went out, I found 2 Republicans who agreed with me and who co-sponsored the bill with me. And because it's bipartisan, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to move forward a little bit more smoothly than if it was just me or just them. So I try a lot, but sometimes, there are issues of conscience where it's just a disagreement. And I think that's okay too. I mean, if you stand for something and they disagree, then lay out the disagreement, let the public decide, and that's all right too. But you shouldn't use those principal disagreements as an excuse to fight over everything. We should try and find solutions for the country when we can. At least that's my belief. Yes. Let's see if somebody who hasn't had a chance wants to ask first. No one? Yes, ma'am.
I'd like you to tell me, how long does it take to become a citizen of the United States? Do you start from the beginning through the whole process to the end? My name is Jordana Crone.
Well, the question is, how long does it take to become a citizen of the United States from front to back? And it depends on the route that you take. And I'll give you an example. The law was changed recently so that if you adopt a child, it's an foreign adoption, you're an American, that child becomes an American when they're adopted. And the idea being that the adopted child should be treated exactly the same as a birth child. If the parent is an American, the child should be an American too. If you are in the United States military, you are, and you're a legal permanent resident, you can file to become a citizen in 6 months. And I'll give you an example. Sometimes there are errors. We had a soldier recently in my office who had joined the military, active duty, Afghanistan, and went to get a document and found out that the baptismal certificate that they had relied on was fraudulent. This person thought they were an American citizen. In fact, they were undocumented. The military didn't know what to do. They wanted to promote this person. Instead, they were going to have to discharge this person. And that person was able to naturalize under the statute. So instead of being discharged, she became an American citizen. If you are married to an American citizen and you're a legal permanent resident, you have to wait 3 years before you can apply. If you are not married to an American citizen, you have to wait for 5 years before you can apply. Now, the application doesn't take that long to process. There's actually a pretty hefty fee involved. As you say, you have to learn English and the citizenship exam and then take the oath of office. So I think for most people, it's 6 years.
6 to 8 years.
Well, not 8 years, because once you file, there was a huge backlog at one time because of the rush of applications, but the applications are now pretty much current. There was a problem, we have to do background checks. Everybody who applies to become a citizen has their fingerprints taken, a criminal background check is undertaken for each applicant, because you don't have to just pass the test, you have to be a good moral character. And so if there is a criminal disqualification or a national security disqualification, you can be prevented from becoming an American citizen. There was a huge backlog at one time on getting those fingerprint records through the FBI. That's now been caught up because they've computerized their system, and it's much quicker. That backlog is gone.
I just want to say that I think it's wonderful that, you're all learning English and you want to become citizens. That's wonderful. But I also have a family member that's having a difficult time and doing it the right way, not coming in the back door. And so this is kind of upsetting. I mean, we're a country without borders. Every country has borders, and people are to respect those borders. Everywhere but in our country. And it's not right, and it's not fair. Our country was founded on immigrants, but I think there's a right way and a wrong way.
Well, thank you for that point of view, ma'am. And I think that if you go down to the border, you'll find that there are indeed borders of the United States. It's very difficult to enter without inspection at this point. That was at one time not the case. But that is currently the case. Who else has a comment or suggestion? Yes, ma'am.
First of all, I would like to say that I listened to the Judiciary Committee, and I was very impressed with the questions that you asked. And for the first time in a long time, I felt someone that represented me from California was asking the kind of questions that I wanted to know. So I wanted to thank you for that. But I do have concerns on where that whole investigation is going. How do you perform your... Are you
talking about the AP issue?
No, I'm talking about the IRS. Okay. How do you do your job when people stand in front of you that have been subpoenaed to answer your questions,
and never have an answer. I watched the whole thing, and it was, I don't know, I don't remember that, I don't think I know that. I was in industry for 40 years. I reached the job of a senior vice president, and if we had a problem, and I reported directly to the president, if he called me in and I told him, I don't know, I don't remember, I wouldn't have been there. So how do you manage this? And then my biggest question that's all tied up with this IRS, they're going to handle the Affordable Care Act.
Yes.
Are they ready to do this?
No.
Do they need to hire people when they can't even manage the people they have? This will take down our economy if this is not done effectively. And how can I heard someone on a talk show yesterday say, citizens, it's time to take back our country. I don't know how to do that. I've written to you, I've written to Dianne Feinstein, I've written to Barbara Boxer, I've given all kinds of ideas. My emails got more and more aggressive, and I get the same response, canned back, no matter what I said. No, you don't listen to what I'm saying. All you do is, okay, you want to talk about Benghazi, so here's your answer. And I don't know what to do. I'm very concerned. I don't know where this IRS thing is going. Obamacare scares me. My brother, who's 64, just had his increase by 25%. One person, $776 a month, with no medical issues for him. None. And I don't know what to do. I want to be a good citizen. I don't know how to do it.
On the IRS investigation, actually the Judiciary Committee is not engaged in that. The House Oversight Committee is attempting to do that, and I honestly am a little worried about their investigation, because if there's an investigation, it needs to be without a tinge of partisanship, and I think it's unlikely that that is how that's going to proceed, given the chairman, who I co-sponsor bills with. I mean, I work with him in the Judiciary Committee, and we work to bring down SOPA, if you remember SOPA from last year. But he sometimes he can't help himself on the partisanship arena, it looks to me. Clearly, there needs to be a review. The Inspector General did a review and was the one, an audit. But I think we've got to figure out a way so somebody without a partisan agenda can go in and get to the bottom of that. Whether that's the General Accountability Office, possibly, but I think it's unlikely that a congressional committee, as it's currently looking, is going to get to the bottom of it. One question I honestly have is why, the tax section says that you shall be a social welfare organization. And it didn't say, it says exclusively. And somehow, decades ago, that got turned into primarily in the IRS. I sort of question why people should get a tax write-off for political activity, whether it's right or left. You can do whatever you want in this country, but I just sort of, it'd be a lot easier if there was not a tax deduction so that the IRS had to be making a judgment. But wherever you are on the political spectrum, I just have a question about that, I'll tell you.
But I feel that's taking the issue away from what really happened, what they did, and what needs to be investigated.
Well, we don't know exactly what they did, yes.
Yes, we do. They apologized.
We know that they were using keywords that look completely wrong to me in terms of, identifying who to look at. But what we don't know is, how are we going to find out which social agency is actually a political agency? And I'm not saying just conservatives, but also liberals. I mean, there were groups on right and left that were seeking this tax benefit, and then a determination had to be made by the taxing agency what was the amount of their activity about politics. And I think that's just a route to trouble. I mean, I'm not saying that they did a great job. In fact, I think we need to get to the bottom of how they messed up. But I think we also look at how we set this up to kind of, for that problem to occur. And I hope that we do deal with that underlying statutory
But that's a
issue as
secondary
well.
thing.
No, I understand. I'm not disagreeing. I think we need an answer to both.
But do you ever think that in your wildest dreams that you would ever be able to get a bill through Congress that said no write-offs for political organizations, period?
Well, you know,
I agree with you. We should
it's
have-
possible. It's possible.